Can we start, please? Let's start.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah.
at least let people in before
Thank
they
you.
leave.
Hey, we should have some flowy music happening. Well, welcome everyone as you come on. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
You want some flowing music? Okay, bet.
Ask and you shall receive. Yeah.
Hi, good afternoon. Greetings, everyone. We give honor to all those who are gathered and also your spirits who walk with you. In the spirit of unity, we're going to open with salutations to Papa Legba, who's the owner of the Crossroads, the primordial linguist who speaks everyone's language. And if you know these prayers, then feel free to follow along. And everyone is also invited to clap along as well. Àti bọ́n lẹ́gbà ó sí o, Kànjọ́lẹ́ ò lẹ́gbà ẹ̀. Àti bọ́n lẹ́gbà ó sí o, Kànjọ́lẹ́ ò lẹ́gbà ẹ̀. Dandan mi náà ó sí o. Pẹ̀rọ sọ̀ndọ̀ mi wà ó lẹ́gbà ẹ̀. Pẹ̀rọ sọ̀ndọ̀ mi wà ó lẹ́gbà ẹ̀. Àyíṣàn fi èbí èpè ọ̀sọ̀ndọ̀ mi wà lẹ́gbà ẹ̀ o. Missy always on Missy Guato, yeah, oh. Missy always on Missy Guato, yeah, oh. Guato really don't go the way for Missy always on Missy always on Guato really like bad. If one cat will keep my share always on. I fear way, I fear way. I fear way, go really like bad now go. I fear way, oh Baba. I fear way, I fear way. I feel away. I feel away. Go, let Bana go. I feel away. Oh, Baba. I go see, I go la.
I go see, I go la. Next slide.
Next slide, please. Well, next slide. So welcome again. This is going to be our order for the day, our order of service, so to speak. We're going to start off with a more formal welcome to you all, and then we'll jump into a panel discussion about our theme. And then we'll transition into a more interactive storytelling time. And this is storytelling that features the Loa and the Orisha. And then we'll close with a poem for you all. So thank you again for coming. We hope that you enjoy. Next slide, please.
Welcome, family. Before we start, we would like to acknowledge everyone on this call, everyone on this Zoom, everyone that has brought tidings to this event. We call on your ancestors to be in space with us. We call for all our historical ancestors, our Pan-African ancestors, those that was there before we even knew the beginning was to come. Let that energies, those cosmic energies, be in alignment with us today. Let us understand that we are at sacred time. This is sacred time stamp. Let us understand the reason for calling on this journey at this time is to be a witness, in a shift that is happening in the cosmos, on land space. And we welcome you. We welcome those who have took part in putting this event together. We welcome them with honor, with honneur and respect for having the opportunity to bring light in this context that we need right now, so much light. My name is Charlene Desir, Wambo Charlene Desir, and I am one of the vice presidents for Kusamba. And we wanted to think about what would be the blessing, the Loa, the Orisha, the cosmic energy that would guide this year of our work. And it calls for a rebirth for us to understand our positionality is sacred. Who we are sacred. The things we believe in ought to be honored. And in doing that, Papa Loko and Mama Aizan comes into consciousness. We need them. Mama Aizan and Papa Loko are the guardians, the polarities, the understandings of initiation, whether it is through birthright, whether it is through coming back to ancestry, whether it is that I woke up this morning and I know that I am sacred. We call on that energy of initiation back to us, an initiation back to source, an initiation back to our ancestors. And let Papa Loko and Mama Aiza, who guards the sacred space of initiation, who prepares the tomb as we understand the womb in which we come into. Sometimes we gotta live and die and live every day. We call them into our initiation of this year of Kosamba, where we recommit. We recommit to our ancestors. We recommit to Pan-African understanding. We recommit and take our birthright. So Thank you for being here. This will be the first of several presentations that Kosamba will have virtually this year. And there is no barrier that will hinder us from being in spirit together. Next slide, please. And our sacred president has a very special day today on the 13th. 13th is a sacred number. We forget that because the opposite is true sometimes. Oh, be scary. Oh, it's the 13th. No, be scary. 13th is grace. We are the 13th. And I just want to honor our beloved president who sacrifices time, energy, and strength to see that Kosamba is in alignment with what our ancestors have asked us to do. So I want to say a shout out, happy birthday to Yaya Yannick. I believe I'm, if someone can help me, is she here with us? She may not be here with us yet, so maybe she will grace us, but just let us honor her ancestors. And perhaps when she does come on, she will be able to grace us with a blessing. I have my sister here. We talk about Ubuntu, because she is, we are. And because those that came before her, she is. And when we talk about Kosamba, we have invited our gracious Mama Claudine to be in space with us. We have invited her to be in space with us today, to be in dialogue with us today as one of the founders of Kosamba. And she's still walking with us. So we honor you, precious sister, in the work that you do. May your ancestry continue to be blessed, and your historical ancestry and your academic ancestry for committing to us in so many ways. So and it was Mama Claudine, my sister Claudine, that talked about wanting to honor the work in education and what it means. And with my sisters, Dr. Pamela Hall, who we believe in true Pan-Africanism and what is that supposed to mean? Next slide. And we for almost a decade, we worked and created a program and worked with young people. And it went from Miami to Haiti. And we decided to write a book, to talk about what it means to be in our consciousness and what it means to be educators. We're both in Florida and educators in Florida. And right now that we're understanding that books are being banned, we are told not to talk about the Haitian Revolution. We're taught not to talk about the passage that we survived. They want us to be invisible. And when we have education, we must have restoration. We must have restoration. This is a call for restoration. It's a call for us to understand the psychosocial needs that should be embedded in education. We have to decolonize our minds to re-educate ourselves. And there is a process where we must restore ourselves back to where we always were, and where we always will be. And in doing this, I think of my beloved IET and what IET is walking. We are again in a Bois Caïman. We're in this process of fighting, securing our liberation. It is complex, but then it's really simple at the same time. And I wanted to share an image and a video of the work that I do with young people in Haiti and Jacmel. I know that my sacred mother, I saw her come in, the beloved Mumbu, Mari Mood Evans. And this is in we wanted our summer program in Jacmel to be in a Peli Style. That's where we meet. We wanted that work. I see other sisters here that have come and helped in this process. And Societe Nago is the land that came, I didn't have a space to go. and they took me in that land space. And this video is very important because this was the morning that President Jovenel Moïse was assassinated, when we found out. And we had to go to camp. We had to go to camp. And what do we tell our children? What do we tell them? That this is your inheritance. We remind them that they are central. Can you please play the video?
I am love.
I am love.
I am peace.
I am peace.
I am healing.
I am healing.
I am Haiti.
I am Haiti.
I am love for Haiti.
I am love for Haiti.
I am peace for Haiti.
I am peace for Haiti.
I am healing for Haiti.
I am healing for Haiti.
I am spirit of Haiti.
I am spirit of Haiti.
Jeje.
Jeje.
Haiti.
Haiti.
Jeje.
Jeje.
Haiti.
Haiti.
Jeje.
Jeje.
Haiti.
Haiti.
Oh.
Oh.
Moi c'est l'amour.
Moi c'est l'amour.
Moi c'est la paix.
Moi c'est la paix.
Moi c'est guérison.
Moi c'est guérison.
Moi c'est l'esprit.
Moi c'est l'esprit.
Moi c'est Haïti.
Moi c'est Haïti.
Moi remets Haïti.
Moi c'est Haïti.
Aïe bobo.
Aïe bobo.
Next slide. We do not stand, sit, walk, talk by ourselves. There's a source energy that guides us always. There's cosmic energies, Luau, Risha, and the like that come in unison for us to sing our song. And with Kosamba, we're very deliberate. We are very deliberate that the Pan-African positionality is significant. Pan-African scholarship is significant. Pan-African epistemology is significant. And we ground ourselves. And when we were preparing for this, we just had open, let spirit speak. You have to believe that spirit speaks through you. You must believe that. You must have the consciousness that when you open your mouth, you are sanctified because spirit has chosen to give you breath. So we are readjusting, realigning, restoring our understanding. And we had some grounding statements when we just began this process. What are we doing? Why must we speak of education? Why must we be in the consciousness of restoration? And I said, let us step back into what we always were. We always were. Ubuntu, together. Together we always were. Yeah, Michelle reminded us, it is time for us to resurrect our ancient selves. We've been dormant, sleeping. If you are of this tradition, you believe that you have had multiple experiences on this earth plane and other planes. Let us remember our ancient. Let us go all the way back from the beginning and resurrect the very essence that when we could see light. And our sacred Sisi said, what kind of inhabitants do we want to leave on the earth? Right? We all are connected to someone that is witnessing us. What are we teaching? And what is it that we want to leave? So we invite you also in this anointing to think about how you showed up. You're here, whether you're live or in another time space are going to be watching. Please state your anointing to yourself. What is your commitment to decolonizing the imagination? What is your commitment to connecting to you as a tool, as a source, as an epistemology of education? And how are you restoring yourself? How are you restoring yourself first so that you can restore others? Aibobo. All right, Aibobo, next slide.
Aye bobo. All righty. So we're going to hear a lot more from Mama Dr. Charlene. This panel discussion is, well, the title, take us back to the title of this event, Edikasyon and Restoration, Where the Waters Meet, Education in Times of Resistance. So we have three esteemed panelists assembled who are all our board members of COSAMBA, who've done work theorizing and implementing Pan-African education programs. So we are going to hear just a little bit from them about lessons learned from doing this work, some challenges, some triumphs, some lessons learned, and hopefully some things that we can take back with us and it can inform our own work. And however we are educators, however we choose to serve our community and educate. So we have Dr. Claudine Michel, Mambo Dr. Charlene Desir, and Asoju Iyanifa Michelle Abimbola. So my first question is directed at all three. They are going to introduce themselves, briefly summarize the work that they've done, and to tell us why Pan-African education is critical for these times. So who would like to start? In about 4 minutes each. Anybody like to start? Or how about we start with our elder, Mama Claudine? Why don't we do that?
Well, welcome to everyone, and special prayers for Haiti with what's going on. May the ancestors bring some light, open path, so the suffering and the injustices can stop. Okay, as you know, Dr. Mambo Charlene mentioned, I'm one of the founders of COSAMBA that was created at UC Santa Barbara on the campus where I taught for almost 40 years. And basically, it was about creating another space, what I call other academic spaces to resist and to defend and to illustrate what our traditions are about, and what, how we're going about sharing our own knowledge within the academy and outside. To tell you a little bit about my background, I was raised in Haiti, went to school in Haiti, and I was very rebellious in the Catholic schools where I was. I never really could relate to the values that the nuns were sharing. There was so much competition in the classroom. There was what I call the othering of other students, whether because of linguistic differences and who could be more proficient in French or not. The preventing of speaking Creole, which is the national language spoken by all Haitians. The rote memorization. Like I remember this chemistry teacher coming in, and it's like, without saying good morning, without saying anything, it's like, if you have sodium acting on blah, 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 okay? And it just didn't sit right with me. And I knew that I always wanted to be in education. I went to the École Normale de Jardinière d'Enfants to study preschool education. And that's probably the course that marked me the most. There was one little course, one semester called The Haitian Child and L'Enfant Haïtien. And for me, that's what education was about. And I then went to École Normale Supérieure, but still dissatisfied. It's like, who is this child that we want to educate? And that's when I turned to ethnology afterwards, where I really learned about issues of, race and class, and, becoming aware of my own privilege, and also learning about folklore, learning about Vodou. And, that space, which is traditionally viewed, we know all the stereotypes about, Vodou is, witchcraft and all these other things, but learning how that space of coming from people who are traditionally viewed as lesser than had those riches, those cultural riches, those elements that really define who we are as a people, not only as a Haitian people, but as, Pan-African members. And then in terms of pursuing my career, I found an intellectual home in the Black Studies department. And it was either for me going back to Haiti or really being in that space of, always questioning, a space of insubordination vis-a-vis the academic, insubordination vis-a-vis the kinds of depictions of our people. So in terms of the value of Pan-African education, do we have a choice? We don't, and like Audre Lorde said, there's no hierarchy of oppression. We're all linked. We are one people. And I know on a practical level, I hear about differences between African American and Caribbean people. I know that, coming from Haiti, I found a home with the African American community when I had the privilege, the honor of landing on the African soil in Tanzania and Kenya. Those were my first stop in Africa. We are one people. We are one people, and this is our strength. This is our force. Pan-Africanism from the time of its origin has been about the struggle of people of African descent, wherever they were, against enslavement, colonization, neo-colonizations. And it's imperative, and that's why I really value the work of Dr. Charlene Desir and Dr. Pamela Hall, because we have basically, for like 40, 50 years now in the academy, started to deconstruct, those myths and misrepresentations about herself. But it's time to build. It's time to, actually show. It's time to do. It's like, this is how we do it, okay? And with Kosamba, we call it défense and illustration, because we've defended, we've shown what the religion is not, what those traditional values are not, but what is it that we actually do, who we are. And I'm sure we'll talk about that more. But really, Pan-Africanism is this, extraordinary movement of conscientization. We could go back to Paulo Freire with, knowing who we are and where we're going as a collective, okay? It's all about Black liberation. It's about return to the ancestral values. It's about return to our own epistemology. It's about who we are. And when we think about religion really helps us orient ourselves, like Charles Long used to say, in the universe. So how do we go back to who we are fundamentally, collectively, to continue the struggle and for the liberation of our mind, body, and spirit?
Okay. Wow. Wow. Mama Claudine just set it off. Thank you. There's so much in there. There's such richness in there that you opened up for us with, thank you so much for your generosity and for that really broad and rich introduction and entry point into this topic. So, and who would like to go next? Mama Charlene, Ian Michelle, who are you in this work, right? Who are you in this work, and why is Pan-African education critical for these times? You're muted, Mama Charlene, if you're answering. Are you jumping in? Why don't you go next?
Yes. Thank you. I am, the granddaughter of Hensh, Central Plateau in Haiti. I'm the, granddaughter of Port-au-Paix, where my father's folks are from. I am the granddaughter of La Boule, in the mountains. And I've been adopted in the Edikasyon of Jacmel. And through the passage of West Africa, I remember in my soul, I remember in my heart, I remember in my veins. I remember when I look in a mirror of who I am and where I came from. And then I ended up in Mattapan, Massachusetts, that flourished as one of the Meccas, the Haitian Meccas in Boston. You know, I am all those things that they didn't want me to be that I became. You know, like for me, this work came and caught me as a doc student, you know, having writer's block, and then the laws, the energies began to educate me. I began to do images. You know, they told me that, you know, stop. We sent you to school. We sent you to Harvard. We sent you there, and we will educate you first. And I spent a semester understanding this, and then I got resources upon resources. So I was asked that knowledge of ancestors, the knowledge of Loa, the knowledge of voodoo, that who is my institution shall be. So I come in, you know, bewildered, fragmented, and trying to understand and restore myself, coming that I was lied to. I was lied to throughout my whole education. I did not see my reflection, dark, beautiful, and voodoo. So I come, this is who I am, and I must disrupt. I am of Bwakaima epistemology by any means necessary. So I had a very interesting time in school, to say the least. But when I was done, you know, my first impression was, you know, I got awards, but they didn't help me find a job. I got a dissertation prize where Gide was centered in all of my data chapters. Gave me all sorts of money, but they said, you know what? We're not going to do that part of it. So in understanding that, because there's something about that process that makes you understand that you have to reimagine yourself. You know, so I'm colonized, but you know what? I have been walking the walk of decolonizing myself. So Pan-African education is necessary for us to see our reflection. It is necessary to step into the decolonization work. It is necessary to give our descendants, our collective descendants of children, another lens to come back to themselves. And doing this work in Miami with my sister Pamela Hall, after year 2, you know, this was right after the earthquake, we realized that our children's spirits were broken. You know, in Pan-African psychology, we don't say you have mental health, we say you have spirit damage. And in doing that, year 2 out of the 7 years, we began to have a psycho-spiritual education lens in how we did the work. They had to meditate. They had to see their reflection every day in every aspect. They had to understand how they communicated through stories and understanding of self through other. So, I mean, this is why this is so important. It is so important that we are in a civil war within ourselves, that we must use the armor of Pan-African consciousness, the same ones that freed our ancestors, in understanding that liberation is theirs. This is how important this work is. In a time when we are overtly attacked, that we're banning books. You cannot say this, that, or the other. So we are here to give homage for the sacrifice our ancestors have done, and to honor them, and to fix ourselves back into ourselves. This is why Pan-African education is so important. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Wow. Wow. Yes, yes, yeah, yes, indeed. Such critical work, so important. Thank you. Thank you. And now, Ian Michelle, can you please enlighten us on who you are your unique perspective in this work and why Pan-African education is critical for these times.
Hi, Boo. Thank you so much. It's just such an honor to be here with all of you and all of the spirit guides and ancestors that are present with you as well. We give thanks and we're very grateful. I think Mama Claudine and Mambo Charlene has already said everything that needed to be said. But this work of educational decolonization, of what I call educational reparations, what Mambo Charlene calls educational restoration through psycho-spiritual restoration. We're all kind of doing the same work in honoring our primordial sources, our primordial selves, in our efforts to bring healing and unity and to restore the balance, not only of the earth, but of the cosmos. You know, when they began a few years ago exhuming the mass graves of First Nations people in Canada and the United States, this place that is Turtle Island. And we found these bodies of children underneath schools. It was the perfect image for what Western education was intended to do. It was not only death of the body, but death of the mind and death of the psyche and death of the soul in order to facilitate white supremacy and the profit and capitalism that the Western Eurocentric, Euro-linguistic speaking world relied upon, the murder of Black and Brown and Indigenous children. And so what was called education, and I come from a matriarchy of educators, and I honor my own ancestors in the Nesbitt and McElwain family in the hills of upstate New York, where railroads and trees and spirits walked through the lakes. But all of us have come to a place where if all of us are free, none of us are free, right? Fannie Lou Hamer said that, and she continues to be one of my own guides. As a white person in this work, I think it's really important for us all to acknowledge that when any member of our human body is harmed, all of us are harmed. And if all of us don't have a role in the repairs, the repair cannot happen. So I think it's far past time for the descendants of Europeans in the world to bow down and salute the ancestors and the spirits of Africa. And so as part of this work, together with my beloved husband, Professor Wande Abimbola, we are this year, 2024, celebrating the 16th anniversary of the Ifa Heritage Institute in Oyo, Nigeria, which is a post-secondary 2-year tuition-free educational institution in which the entire curriculum is built around Indigenous Yoruba knowledge. This includes faculties of Ifa studies, the vast body of sacred orature, Indigenous medicine, music and dance, Indigenous technology, and languages. The Department of Languages, it requires every student to study the Yoruba language, the colonial language of English, and to choose either French, Spanish, or Portuguese in honor and in building connections with the Pan-African world. So, and we also have indigenous technology, languages, Ifa studies, indigenous medicine, music and dance, and Yoruba technology. But the main focus of our work is to maintain this astronomically large body of sacred oral literature that is preserved in the minds of our elders and has been shared from ancestor to elder to child since the beginning of time. And these stories, which we'll learn more later in this session, about the real importance of storytelling, but these stories are more than folk tales. They're more than myths or fables or the kind of languages that people use to denigrate the truth. These are the stories that tell us the history of the world, the history of the cosmos, the history of ourselves. And so in the body of Ifa literature, there are 256 books, so-called books or chapters. These are called Odu, within each one of which there's an extent of 800 stories or verses that tell everything you need to know, everything that science, so-called science, is just now discovering, like what happens when lightning strikes the ground and how can that power the world? Or how come if people are not honoring the rivers as divine entities, they don't understand why we cannot pollute these sacred places. The indigenous knowledge, the geographical knowledge, the knowledge of how people are connected, the knowledge of mathematics, of computer science, of medical science is all enshrined within the Sacred Ifa literary corpus. And our mission with this school that was sponsored by UNESCO in the year 2005 with the proclamation of the oral and intangible heritage of humanity is to not allow this body of knowledge to die. And when we pray, we say with our right hand, Otumia ba niwana nibio timoa. With my right hand, I make beautiful propositions that come from the land where day dawns, or Australasia. With my left hand, I make those beautiful propositions come to pass from the sacred land of Africa where all of us were born. And so the very essence of our sacrifices and of our work is in this unity across the globe. Thank you.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Right. This is really incredible. There's so many themes across what all three of you talked about. And what and as a linguist, right? Of course the language part, stuck out to me, and and how language and how reclaiming these languages, the importance of language is an important part of this educational reparations and restoration that we've been talking about. Right, speaking the language of our ancestors, calling on them, using that the Ifa, the Odu corpus. There's so much that's really important. That's encapsulated in the language, in the words that we choose to say and how we say it. So now I'm going to open it up we're going to start with our individual questions, and we're going to circle back to Mama Claudine. So I'm currently researching an article on Africana religious literacies. And I found this amazing piece by you published in Comparative Education Review. So for those of you who are interested, and it's about the educational benefits of Vodou in schools in Haiti. So I wanted to know, what inspired you to research the moral and educational benefits of Vodou for schools in Haiti? And can you please share with us what some of those benefits are? And and any particular aspects of Vodou that you aim to highlight in that article. Can you unmute? Mama Claudine, you have to unmute. Okay.
It's hard to summarize, the work that I've done. And you mentioned that article. We also have, our spirit myth in book about Haitian Vodou. And there's also Invisible Power, in which there's another article where I unpack some of those things. Well, education is political. Education it's really a political act. It's about education traditionally has been about reproducing the status quo. And for us, it's that political act of opening up to, in terms of access, more people having access, but also what we offer, the quality of what we offer. And basically, Vodou is not just a spiritual practice, a philosophy, a cultural orientation. It's also a wonderful platform in terms of pedagogical techniques, in terms of our educating our people. And it's also a moral and ethical code of being. And this is just a fascinating area of research, because a lot of people have done work on, rituals and all kinds of healing in Vodou. But, I was one of the first to really raise this idea of Vodou as source of pedagogical inspiration in terms of how to intervene with our people. And basically all this is grounded in the African ethos, in the worldview that is behind the religion, the holistic conception of life, that we're all sacred, that it's one chain of being connecting the unborn, the living, the ancestors, the spirit, the Lwa, the Orishas, the fact that this web of interconnectedness cannot be violated. And when it is, that's when there's this disturbance, perturbance. So morality for those who serve the spirit is really this constant effort to bring social cohesion, maintain harmony, balance, which are, like, what does balance means in terms of morality in the Western world? Whereas for us, this is fundamental, this sense of equilibrium that we always must bring to our relations, to all that we're doing. The humanism, which is so central in Haitian Vodou, that profound respect that we have, tout moun se moun, from the children to the elders to our own relationship with the ancestor, the concept of personhood. We are, therefore I am. We start with the collective. We exist in relation to others. We exist because of others, and also there are responsibilities that come with that. The communal life, the sense of belonging, of that we find in a lakou, for example. Both the lakou, as a physical space traditionally in the Haitian compound, but also we talk about the diasporic lakou. Charlene has a wonderful article on that. It's what maintains us. It tells us that we are not on that path by ourselves. It's, moral transgressions is really what brings imbalance to the community. That's when you transgress, disturbing the flow of energy. And of course, all these have repercussions for the school system. Remember that I was saying how, I was disturbed by, the rote memorization, the absolutes, this is the truth, that we were told, versus the fluidity, of our knowledge, the fact that in Vodou, basically it's all about cooperation. It's a learner-centered education. I remember that at a ceremony at Mama Lola's house way back, as an honored guest, it was our second Kosamba. I was given to carry the egg for Dambala and put it in the altar. I dropped it. I thought I was going to die. Okay. And the way that the Mambos and Unga embraced me, like, it's okay. It's okay. So even if there's a misstep, even if there's an error, how you are embraced and valued, how, for example, we are not measured against others, it's your own path. It's your own, like, you have goals to meet, and you are helped throughout that process to meet those goals. It's, and we get into, the value of the body, that sacred, that first sacred altar in us, and how this is something that's not really valued in terms of how children are educated in Haiti, but how much more could we accomplish with songs and performances, where the whole body, Vodou is a dense religion, the value of our proverbs, and so many message about cooperative learning. When you have kids, for example, who share a bed, okay, and then you send them to school, and basically they can't communicate with the others, they can't share their knowledge. So there's so much wealth in terms of what Vodou can bring in terms of pedagogical experience, and how we could really counter the kind of signs, the kind of values that have been taught by our own way of being and way of knowing and ways of thinking and ways of being in community with others. So there's a wealth of profoundly African values that have really not been tapped by the education system in Haiti. So that's the thesis that I put out. And I did some television programs, while I was in Haiti and still finishing my studies. And even though they were not centered on Vodou per se, but it was a series of about 150 television programs where, as a young kid, 18, 20, I had that sense that we needed, education that was relevant to our children. And I remember this little story, for example, where there was a cow and a donkey, there was a lot of puppets in those programs, but the masters had tied them in two separate areas with one cord, and basically they could not eat, okay, because one was pulling in one direction and the other one was pulling in the other direction. And there's a little butterfly who said, do you realize what's happening to you there? Do you realize what has been done to you? Why don't you cooperate, okay, and go towards one pile of grass first, then to the second one? So I had a good sense of what needed to be communicated, even though, of course, the means were very limited with what I could offer. But this is why I'm so gratified by the work of the new generation. When you see somebody like Charlene taking those ideas and applying them in ways that are not, she doesn't take it lightly. This is somebody who's done a program in Miami with her colleague Pam, for 7 years of her life, okay? And now she's into the 5th year of doing the work in Jacmel with the kids, with the Lac aux Enfants. When you take the work of Michelle and her spouse in Nigeria, this is profound, that people would take those ideas and finally implement them. So I am just so gratified, so grateful, and I could start naming all of you there on the call. I just took 2 examples of our presenters here, but we are not only saying that this is what we ought to do, we are doing it. And this is a political act of transformation. I always say that education, this is my little motto, is certainly about informing, passing on some knowledge. It's about forming the character, but most importantly, it's about transforming. Because the same way that education in the past maintained the status quo, reproduced the equalities that created it, our education, our liberating education basically is giving us the tool to liberate our people. Okay. And liberation really starts with the heart and the mind. And once we're free, nothing can stop us. Like Frederick Douglass, for example, when he was being instructed by his mistress and the master tried to stop it, and said, if you teach him how to read and write, you'll make him forever unfit to be a slave. And Frederick Douglass said that I learned as much from my mistress, who was teaching me the ABCs, as I learned from my master, because from him, I understood that education was the path to freedom. Or Carter G. Woodson, who tells us that we've been shown to go through the back door, but if that back door is not there, folks would even create that back door to enter. And those are the chains that we have to break. So.
Oh, my goodness. Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you. Wow. Again, so rich. You've given us so many important things to think about and highlighting the value, right? This pedagogical value of these ancestral traditions and how they teach us how to be, so it's not just the content of what we're learning, but it's how we interact with each other, how we learn in community, how we honor each other. The process is important, right? Thank you so much for that. The humanizing process is important. And so now we're going to pivot back to Mumble Charlene. You mentioned her programs that she's been doing in Florida and in Jacmel. And so we want to hear from Mumble Charlene, any success stories or challenges that you've encountered implementing your educational programs, okay? So, and also, how have you had to adapt over the years? You've been running programs in 2 different locations, but how have you had to adapt your approaches to effectively engage youth in learning about these traditions?
One of the greatest lessons was understanding that the students are also the teachers. So I think one of the important things was the Jenga ship that we created, where older students became the teachers and the mentors of the younger students. So I think sometimes we forget, like, who is the bearer of knowledge. And, I teach because it gives me an opportunity to learn. And, with the program that we did in Florida, if you can imagine, we had 100 Haitian kids on the Barry University campus for 7 weeks. So we had a posse. So there was some, comments about that. Even, I respect my institution where I work. They allow me to do the work that I do because I told them that's the work I'm going to do. That, you see that alignment right there? So that's very important to acknowledge, where we work, Pamela and I. But we had to do adjustments throughout. If you could understand, we started this the year of the earthquake. And we didn't know that the earthquake was going to happen. It took us 2 years to prepare, and it was based on my dissertation. The program was based on the findings of my dissertation, where I did a longitudinal study. And so some of the things was like preparing our kids, our young people, to what others were going to perceive of them as even being in the program, 100 large. And so we began with meditation. We're like, we have Protestant kids, Catholic kids, we have kids of Vodou descent. How do we meet at the middle? And we said, let's meditate and pray. Let's start with an opening ritual that aligns us. We have to have beginning and endings. And one of the things is we were using Haitian principles. And we had to count we maybe had 2 parents that said, what are y'all doing? But, and one of the success stories around this, which I shared at our book opening, was there was a young man that, we taught the meditation. He got shot. And then he was in the hospital and they said he couldn't walk. And he said, I remembered what y'all taught me. And I went into meditation and connected with my higher self. And I said, I will walk. I mean, we are magic. This is why we're feared, we're banned, where all of these things happen. We wanted the kids to think of themselves as divinity. And that is decolonization. That is the psychoeducational work, because they're positioned as less than. We, of course, we had, folks in the institution that did not like what we were doing, but we kept on doing it. So these are these little ideas that you have to decolonize, because Spirit sent us. Spirit conspired that we would meet my group with Dr. Hall, and we did this work. And so the young people began to educate us. Another thing, after the earthquake, we had young people that came straight from Haiti after the earthquake. And we had to readjust, get our therapists to work with them. And we forgot that our Americanized, or our, American Haitian kids that came to our program, they also was witnessing images on the news. And I remember one day a young lady came to me. She's like, my father died in the earthquake. And I want to be seen. So shift every kids in group therapy. It was interesting because they loved it, because they came and said, we also want to be healed, and we did group therapy. So we had to adjust every year. That made sense. One of the things, one year we had a set of identical triplets. They were running the program. And then so I brought in the mom, and I was just like, something, what do they do in your family when there are multiples? And she said, I'm a Protestant now. I don't do anything. There's a great aunt that usually cleanses the children. And I said, well, is she still with us? She said, yes. And I said, for education liberation, for your children to be very aligned in who they are, they must get that bath. They must get that bath. And she said, oh, you're a professor, doctor? Okay. So we learned as we went, and we had to adjust as we did. And in those times, we were doing work in the north of Haiti in 2010, going back and do restoration with young people in Haiti during this time. And then in more recent times, what happens to enrichment in Haiti and Vodou communities? Who does that educational work? I was there, and the pastor came to the peristyle and said, we're doing a Bible camp. I said, okay, well, I have entered this community, so now we will do La Coups Enfants. We will have a summer program for children, all children, particular children who their families are members of a peristyle. So this is how we adjusted. And we became each other's teachers, Pamela Hall and I, and the children were the administrators.
Oh my goodness. So much. We want to hear so much more about that. How the children were administrators, but to be continued. We want to hear how you flip that.
And I want to speak to this slide. We are selling the book on the website 10global.org, and all proceeds are going to the summer program in Jacmel. During this time, we decided to do a year-round program because they miss so much school when chaos happens. And so, I know there's already people that have already donated, but I just wanted to share these images and to we have to be prepared, because we taught the kids individual, interpersonal, and communal responsibilities. Mm-hmm. And so we invite you to send positive energy and prayers, and share the work that we're doing. Thank you very much. Aibobo.
Aibobo. Thank you so much. And so now we're going to hear from Ia Michelle. Next slide, please. How do you navigate the complexities of teaching about Ifa and African traditional religions within educational systems and societies that have limited understanding or acceptance of these systems, right? How do you go about teaching about it within these hostile spaces?
Thank you. I just want to hear more about La Cause Enfants. The spirit moves communities through teaching. And you're right that the societies and educational systems have not really ever been instituted to honor the ancestors, right? So that's why when we were thinking about this panel, we chose to stay away from saying education and instead use the term Edikasyon, because we're talking about something different, something new. Edikasyon, the kind of education that brings knowledge back home from where it was stolen. So although we're very much aware of the fact that free public education across the Africana world has really been a tool of mental, emotional, intellectual, spiritual, academic colonization, we have to counter that with something rather than just say that it's not good, right? So what we've done is try to allow the indigenous models of teaching and learning to be our leaders, which means that the person guiding our work is Ifa Rumila himself. We're not the decision makers. So we started this whole project by bringing together the community of elders, of indigenous Yoruba practitioners from a huge swath of West Africa that extended beyond the borders of the colonial state called Nigeria, who came together and performed divination and sacrifice in order that this school would be good. And the picture that you see here in the middle of this slide is a picture of the Egungun, or ancestor known as Layewu, who is the ancestor of the lineage of Kinshilola hunters. And so we really think about this education as a form of not just epistemic decolonization or resistance to epistemicide, but this is pedagogical, intellectual, spiritual warfare, that we're taking up that mantle emboldened by the hunters and our ancestors, to honor the authority and the knowledge that has been the most brutalized and desecrated. So, for example, in educational systems, knowledge has to be written down. Well, our curriculum is built on a vast body of oral literature, and pedagogy is such that call and response, apprenticeship, repetition, and the Orisha themselves, as Dr. Michelle says in her work, the spirit themselves are our best teachers. So we have to completely flip the script of what it looks like to teach and learn. What is it actually that we're teaching and learning? In what language are we teaching and learning? Right? At schools, our Ifa Heritage Institute, all instruction is delivered in the Yoruba language. No instruction is delivered in a colonial language. And students are required to learn by memory through chanting at least 2 verses out of each of the 256 sacred books. We hold up as our canon the body of literature, of oral literature that has been chanted since the beginning of time in honor of the ancestors and the Orishas. And in addition, we decided collectively that we couldn't just have each department led by a professor who had maybe studied the religious tradition as an anthropological phenomenon, but who was not necessarily a practitioner or devotee. So each one of our 5 faculties is led in tandem because UNESCO requires us to have people with PhDs, but we require ourselves to be led by the indigenous elders, most of whom didn't really ever need to learn to read and write because that would have limited the capacity of their brains. So each one of the faculties is led together by an indigenous elder who is highly respected in the community, who may not have the academic credentials, but is so much more credentialed. And then they have their sidekick, the professor who works with them. So in every opportunity, we're trying to upend what is our understanding of education? What is our understanding of text? What is our understanding of language? What are we learning? Who are we learning it with? Are we learning to be a wealthy person or a powerful person? Or are we learning so that we can honor our ancestors and our future generations?
My goodness. Thank you. Thank you so very much. This was well, we have another slide. Do you maybe want to tell us just something before we close about the second slide?
Thank you. Yeah, so you can see our gate. Everything was done in consultation with the elders. So instead of the pictures where people are wearing uniform dress, that's called asoebi or family attire. That is our graduation gown. It was made in consult with indigenous local artists. So the navy blue is adire, which is the famous tie-dye color that the Gula people still preserve on the coast of the United States.
Right, the Gullah Geechee, right. Yeah,
Yes.
they go. Wonderful.
So then we have these stripes of ashoke, red or maroon or brown and yellow and green because these are the colors of Ifa. And the hat, so we were trying to have a graduation dress that people would be able to recognize as a graduation dress, but not one that honored Western epistemology and educational systems. So here you see people just celebrating themselves. The way that the procession in the lower left corner of this picture is designed is very much in alignment with the procession that leads initiation ceremonies. And the 2 pictures on the right are student groups that decided independently that they wanted to do a performance at the graduation. The picture in the middle on the bottom is Professor Abimbola and a family of Babalawos and Iyanifas and Iyalorisha, Babalorisha, knowledgeable people and their parents who came together for our annual divination and sacrifice as an institution. And you can see in the top right corner that although we have defined ourselves as a tertiary institution, people come with their kids, people come with their grandkids. There's no borders where like you're welcome and you're not welcome. We're very inclusive in the natural sense of the word. You want to come learn, come and learn. That's great. And come and
Mhm.
teach us too. So you see the dad sitting there with his little girl. They came together like that every day. Every day.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Iya, Michelle, Mama Claudine, Mambo Charlene. Thank you for showing us what can be done when we actually start, when we center African, traditional African diasporic spiritual systems in our pedagogy, in our content, right? In our process. In our content, in our process, and everything that we do in education. So I look forward to learning more about them personally. And I know that everyone here does as well, is to look to learning more about your work, because we hope to see some of it in print, and or wherever on the screen, so that we can learn from you and that we can help us. So thank you again for participating in this panel. And now we are going to shift things and move into our storytelling portion.
I will.
Oh,
Thank you, Mambo
thank you.
Khadija, for blessing us and guiding us, in this process. I love you, sister. We're at storytelling time. So where the waters meet. This was a very important idea that we had to really talk about when the salt water meets the sweet water, and waters in general, in terms of, we are the waves in the water. And how do we come back to each other? How do we know that we flow together? And for me, I think when we think about storytelling, my grandmother was a storyteller, and I learned her history through stories. She gave me lessons through stories, and I just thought they were stories. So it becomes a vibration, a fabric, a mantra, in our bodies. And I think it's a pedagogy. Storytelling is a way to understand. And it's a way to have memory. Memory is very important because it reminds us to remember ourselves. We're constantly being dismembered. And how do we go back and connect back to remember ourselves? So I know all of us, several, Mumble Khadija, Ia, Michelle, there's a number of us that are involved in creating stories so that we can have a different way of understanding. It's important for our young people to see children of the earth, all children, but particularly children that look like them. We want stories that not only resonate in our minds, but resonates in our soul. So I'm a qualitative researcher. I say my job is teaching people how to tell their stories and other people's stories. It runs that deep. So, we have members in our community that wanted to speak to this a bit. And, we wanted to invite young people, and I know some of these stories are for the elders as well. For the elders to be in homage with us as we think of the needs of the planet, as we think about how Pan-Africanism has always been central since the beginning. And so we have some stories that are going to be told in other languages. We have stories that's going to be told virtually. We have stories that's going to be read. We have stories that's going to be orated. And so we ask the adults in the room, the elders in the room, to hold space with the stories and to become a child. Sometimes you have to become a child to grow up again. Because some of the stories, the children may not be able to follow, but we want you to hold breath, And if a child is next to you, hug them tight. If a child is next to you, honor their divinity. If a child is next to you, remind them that they were wanted from the universe since the inception of how we began. And I want us to think about this, especially, we have a special reading from an elder from Brazil. We forget Brazil outside of the different countries in Africa. Brazil has one of the largest populations outside. And so I invite you to listen. One of the members of our community that is here with her precious divinity at hand is going to read for us. Next slide. The background, because it's important for us to hold space. It's important for us to hold space. I mean, this amazing, Egbomi, she's holding my book all the way in Brazil. Like we gotta hold each other. We forgot how to hold each other. We got to remember to hold each other. And she is going to read to us. We're gonna read to listen to her bio that she wants to share. And she has a reading. And I want you, as you listen to the reading, she's going to tell us a story, an origin story, of how the salt water met the sweet water. And I want you to hold breath with IT. I want you to hold breath with all of us who are in the Americas. I want to hold breath with African Americans, with Trinidadians. I want you to hold breath with everyone that has the pigmentation of light. And they can be other colors, but they have the stamp that the beginning began in Africa. And it began in Africa before that we even understood that was the name. So let us hold breath as you listen. Bring your prayers on. Ask for what you want from the universe. Ask what you want for the children, the next generation. Ask for what you want for yourself. Ask what you want for the elders. Ask for what you want for those yet to come. As you listen to the stories in whatever format that it has been made for that lesson to be brought for you, for your understanding, your overstanding. So I invite my dear sacred sister Cece, who I love very much. She always tells me she loves me. I love you too. Can you please invite us to understand the energy of your spiritual mother?
Yes. First of all, I want to thank you, Mari, l'honneur respect, as a small lead in this prosperous forest that is Kosamba. I want to thank you all for your amazing work that you do for our children and for all of us. And I'm going to briefly introduce my mother, Cici, my mentor and friend. Ebomina Shidi Souza was born in Rio de Janeiro in 1939. And she's a senior researcher at the Pierre Verger Foundation. She met Fatumbi, her spiritual father, and helped him classify more than 11,000 slides. And she was in charge of cataloging and naming who the people were, what they were wearing, what was the meaning of everything that was in those pictures. Cici has always been working with children, and especially since the foundation in 2005 of the Cultural Center Pierre Verger. And she always says that her pedagogy is a pedagogia de senzala, which is a pedagogy from the quarter of the enslaved. So she always tells academics, you are from the Casa Grande, and I am from the senzala. So you do your pedagogy is from the big house, and I am from the quarter of the enslaved. Her pedagogia de senzala, she works with children with capoeira, teaching them meteorology, geology through Nago, as she says, or Yoruba cosmology. She is an Egbomi from the Tejero Ile Ashe Obo Aganju. And last year, she received the honorary title of Doctora Honoris Causa from the Federal University of Bahia. And Cici is so happy to have received this invitation from Kosamba, and she especially wanted to congratulate Mambo Charlene for her work. She said it must be so hard, the work you do, especially in the United States. She was very impressed how you would have pedagogical work based on Vodou epistemology in Florida. So she was very impressed, and she sends you congratulations and thanks. And also, she always has Haiti in her heart and in her mind, and she's always praying and is very concerned for what is happening. So that is a little bit who the Cici is. And thank you all for taking the time to listening to her.
Thank you, Ornelli Smith. So we're going to hear her story. It's about 2.5 minutes, so please set your intentions. Yes.
Olokun é o pai de Iemanjá. Iemanjá, então, oferecida é o casamento. Olokun oferece a filha dele para casar com Olodumare, o destino. Ela se casa e tem a G, a riqueza, e Olokun e Orungan, o oxigênio. Os 2 filhos que ela pare. Ela vai e se separa do mar e vai ser mulher de Obatalá. E ela fica grávida. E o filho dela, segundo os antigos, ela foi uma mulher que sempre os filhos tiveram segundo as intenções com ela. Aí quando ele vê que ela não está mais com o pai dele, o Olodumare, começa a perseguir ela como mulher. Ela vai e se joga na terra. A terra está criada. Quando ela chega na terra, ela pare. Primeiro, a água salgada. Depois da água salgada, a água doce. Depois da água doce, o dia e a noite. Depois do dia e da noite, isso tudo vai saindo de dentro dela. Ela pare Exu, Ogum, Oxóssi. Depois que ela pare esses 3, ela vai parir Orixabi, que é o orixá da medicina. Depois ela vai parir Dadá Adiacá, protetor das crianças. Depois ela vai parir Baiani, protetora das crianças, que é junto com Dadá Adiacá. São 2 irmãos juntos que não são gêmeos. Depois ela vai parir Xangô. Depois ela vai parir Ominhanha, que é conhecida como a mãe de Oiá. E ela pare todos esses orixás. E
Next
o
slide. Oh, thank you. So we have the right to claim our origin stories. We have the right to create our origin stories and tell us how we were. This is one of the things in the storytelling. I invite, all parents or those connected to a child, tell them the story of their name. How did they get their name? We must begin with all of our stories. So thank you so much for blessing that space within ourselves where, we claim that perhaps from all the waters where we meet, that's where all energy was created. Okay, so one of the things that I found in my summer program, particularly in Haiti, was that finding stories that match with the young people that I wanted to speak to. I'm focusing on the summer program, in a Vodun community, which all other students are invited that live in the surroundings. So we had non-Vodou families as well, but the majority were Vodou families. And so, for the last 2 years, creating stories with members in my nonprofit. And so I wanted a story on Fueda. So my colleague sister, we drafted and then she wrote the story and I honored it. So I want to read to you a Fueda story that we created together in my organization. Next slide. Okay, so the story is called Princess Fueda's Mirror. So how we divide the stories, they're in English and then in Creole. I'm going to read the English part. Okay. Kendi was sad. Yesterday, she was glad. A pair in her village, Don Don, made her feel bad, calling her names and telling her she would be poor all her life. Kendi heard these words and knew they were not right. Today, Kendi sat by the Buyaya River. She wanted to be alone and away from the noise before she became utterly bitter. She sat as close to the water as she could. She looked deep into the water as much as she could. The water was calming, and so was the breeze that blew from the trees. Next slide. On the left side of her, she saw a glimmer. When she turned her head to look, she could see a handheld mirror. It was gold and pink, rubies on the rim. She rose up and held it in her hand. Kendi looked at the mirror, examining it. Well wrapped around the handle was golden, stringed with golden bells. She looked at it and saw herself. She then began to question out loud, who does this mirror belong to? In her ears, she began to hear a tune. The bells were shaking, then the Princess Fidline appeared. She was not a blurry vision. She was very clear. She was a sight to see. Princess Fidline dressed in long lace attire, all rosy and pink. She even wore a crown. She is beautiful and unique. She said, my dear, why do you cry? Kendi then asked, how did you know I was crying? Princess Fidline said, I could hear you through the mirror from the other side. I will answer your question and then you could answer mine. I am the owner of the mirror. My name is Princess Fidline. How are you? You asked me the ultimate question and now I appear before you. My dear, why do you cry? I can tell you are in pain and it hurts deep down inside. Kendi told Princess Fidline, someone in the village told me I would be poor all my life and called me out of my name. What they said brought me emotional pain. You fell for this trick. But love, let me tell you, you are so above it. Princess Fidline then asked, what is your name, love? Kendi is my given name, Princess Fidline excitedly said. Let that name be what you answer to. Any other name may not suit you. Answer to the name that pleases you and do not answer at all. If not, for the fool's trickery, you may fall. Rise above it, stand tall, look at your surroundings. What do you see? Kendi said, I see beauty surround me. Yes. Do you know that this beauty is called? What this beauty is called? Princess Fidline asked Kendi. Yes, it is nature, answered Kendi. Stand up straight and say it loud. My name is Kendi. I am wealthy, for nature loves me. Repeat it again, Princess Fidline said. This time, say it with a smile. Kendi had said the phrase one more time. My name is Kendi. I am wealthy because nature loves me. Yes, my dear, this is the way to express love for yourself when others are being mean. Be honest with your words. Keep them positive. Keep them clean. Next slide. Kendi smiled again, and Princess Fledin, she says, thank you. Kendi laid the mirror down softly. Princess Kendi said, you are welcome, my dear. Remember when you go home, hold what you declare very near. Say it again for me one more time. My name is Kendi. I am wealthy because nature loves me. Say it again to ensure that it has a place in you and your heart and mind. My name is Kendi. I am wealthy because nature loves me.
Hey, Bobo.
Ay, bobo.
Ay, Bobo Ashe.
Next slide.
What could be more perfect than a little girl whose connection to Mother Nature was the thing that empowered her to go beyond the evils of humanity, mothered by Freda and our ancestral mothers. That story, is just perfect. And thank you for reading it the way that you read it, Mambo Charlie, and for making sure that it was in written text in Creole as well as in English, for doing that work and for sharing it with us. It is just so powerful, so powerful. And every little kid will hear that story and feel alive, more alive, to know that they are indeed part of nature. And to say that line, nature loves me, is so powerful. I would invite you all to unmute yourselves if you want to and say it back. Nature loves me.
Nature
Nature loves me.
Nature loves me.
Loves me.
Loves me.
Nature loves me.
Ashe, ay, Bobo.
Nature loves me.
Yes.
Nature loves me.
Loves me. And you know, when we say nature in the Pan-African world, in Africana cosmologies and literacies, all of the beings in the spirit world have concurrent elements of the natural world. So every spirit is also an element of nature. If we want to say, if people say, what do you do? What do you believe in? My answer will be, if we have to put it in a sentence, which is like impossible, we worship nature and we worship the ancestors. So as we shift into Yoruba storytelling, we're really not shifting at all. We're just flowing to a different part of the water. As water knows no boundaries, nobody put up a fence between the river and the sea. We're flowing together. So in the Yoruba storytelling tradition, I would even challenge the idea of storytelling because it's truth telling. It's history telling. And these stories verses, poems, each divinity has their own body of literature that will be chanted, told, or sung in their own voice. And very importantly, elements of that story must be recited verbatim as they have been since the beginning of time. So when you hear some of these stories, you're hearing the voice of ancient Africa, the voice of the primordial source. So with that, I would invite you to go to that place where you feel connected to nature and your primordial source and all of us together, because storytelling is a collective process, right? I don't have any positionality without being in relationality with all of you. So thank you for creating that situation. If we could move to the next slide, please. Our fellow Kosamba board member wasn't able to be here today, but did record examples of stories from his own experience of the indigenous Yoruba religious tradition. So we'd like to play those for you now, please. This is Dr. Ayodeji Ogunaike. Could we play the video? Thank you so much.
Bonjour tout le monde. Very sorry I can't join you in person. I really wish I were there with all of you, but I hope you'll be able to enjoy some of my favorite Yoruba myths and folktales that I plan on telling my children as they get older and are old enough to enjoy them. One of the most famous Yoruba myths is about the Orishanla, or the deity Orishanla, and how he forms all human beings. So early on in the world, there weren't any people. There were just a few of the Orishanla being the oldest one of them, and Olodumare, or Bon Dieu, told Orishanla to form human bodies out of clay. That's why Orishanla is called in Yoruba Alamorere. It's the good or benevolent potter. So he gathered up all of this clay, started forming bodies, heads, shoulders, arms, legs, torsos, everything. But after a long time working in the hot, hot sun, he got really, really thirsty. And so he started drinking a little bit of palm wine, but a little bit of palm wine turned into a lot of palm wine. And then he ended up getting drunk. And while he was drunk, he started forming bodies in all kinds of different ways. So some might have one leg that was longer than another. Some actually only had one arm and didn't have another. Some of them had ears that didn't work or eyes that couldn't see, and all kinds of different variations of human bodies. And then when Orishanla was finished, because he was drunk, he just passed out and fell asleep. Well, one of the things he forgot to do was follow Olodumare, or Bon Dieu's instructions about what to do with the bodies after he had finished. He was supposed to leave them out in the sun for just a little bit of time so they would bake properly. But he left some in the shade and then some out in the sun and left some of them there for too long. And what ended up happening was some of their skin became very, very dark if they were left in the sun for too long, and the ones that were left in the shade had skin that was very, very light. And because Orishanla slept for so long, he didn't wake up until Olodumare, Bon Dieu, had come and breathed life into all of the different people. And so when they came alive, some of them weren't able to walk or weren't able to walk as well as some other people were. But when Orishanla came awake, he realized that it was his responsibility, and so he formed a special and sacred connection with all of those people with bodies that are a bit different or special in one way or the other. And so they have a particular relationship with him and have a particular kind of power and move through the world in a way that's very unique to them, that opens up their own special possibilities. Another one of my favorite stories is that very early on in the world, again, heaven and earth used to be very, very close to each other. So close that people could go back and forth between the two of them all the time. Now, heaven, of course, is the house of Bon Dieu Olodumare. And unfortunately, people didn't treat heaven with as much respect as they should have. So when they would sneeze, they didn't have tissues. So what they would oftentimes do is wipe their noses with their hands like this, but then they wouldn't have anywhere to get rid of all of the snot. So what they would do is they would reach up to the sky and then touch the clouds and wipe all of their snot off on the clouds. And then also when they were eating, they'd eat all kinds of soups and things with their hands. Everybody eats with their hands. And so after you finished eating all of your food, you need to wash them. And some people were lazy and didn't want to get up and go to a river or go find water to wash their hands properly. So again, what they would do is they just reach up, start wiping their hands on the clouds and on the sky. Now, after a long time, Olodumare had tolerated it, but then said, enough. If you can't learn to respect my home and treat it properly, I'm going to move it away so you can't disrespect it and make it dirty anymore. And so Olodumare Bonjo pulled heaven farther and farther away from people, so we can no longer reach it as easily. And now the only way to reach heaven is when we die and when we pass on to the ancestral realm. So these are two of my favorite stories. I'll maybe send another one just in case you have some extra time. But thank you for listening. I hope you enjoy them. And again, I'm very sorry I can't be there with you, but I look forward to sharing more stories again in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. On the theme of heaven, Ifa tells us that there are only two entrances to heaven. We don't have a hell in Africana cosmologies. We have heaven above, we have heaven below. Nobody buries their ancestors in the sky. So one of the entrances to heaven is through the deepest part of the sea. And I'd like to share with you a story from Ifa that tells us about the relationship between the sweet waters and the salt waters. I'm going to share with you a little bit of the narrative, and then I would like to chant the story for you in the Yoruba so you can hear it in the voice of Ifa. And I will invite you to join me in the song in a call and response way at the end. This is a story that pays homage to Olokun and Ifa, the repository of knowledge, the divinity, the name of the knowledge itself, the name that some people have adopted for our religious tradition, is sometimes known as Ifa Olokun because he now resides in the depths of the sea with his final and favorite wife, Olokun. He thought he was going to heal her son from an illness, but it was so nice down there that he decided to stay. Or she talked him into staying, or she fed him into staying, however you want to think about it. But so when we think of Olokun, we're also thinking of the vastness of Ifa and the vastness of the Orishas and the divinities and the Loa and our ancestors. So this is a little story that reminds us that the idea of sweet water and salt water and borders and boundaries is a fabrication of the human mind. That once upon a time, there was time. And this was one of Obatala's children. And time existed in this very cyclical way as a living entity. But the master of that time is the story. Stories direct time. So this story of Olokun has Ifa priests who tell it in ancient times, who are named. Ifa is the master of today. Ifa is the master of tomorrow. To Ifa belongs all the days of the week. These are the names of the three Babalaos who cast divination for Olokun, because all the bodies of water on the earth were having a little quarrel with one another because seniority is a big deal. And nobody could quite decide who was the senior, who was their superior, to whom should they honor as Egbombi or my senior sibling. But Ifa tells us, Ifa Olokun tells us that eventually all bodies of water have to concede seniority to Olokun, the sea. And there's only one. There's no Indian Ocean, Atlantic Ocean, Pacific Ocean, whatever ocean. There's Olokun, the sea. Again, divisionless. So Ifa says like this: Ifa loloni, Ifa lolola, Ifa lolotun la pelu, Orumila loni jo, Morererin Oshadaye, Adifa fun Olokun, Nijo ti eri gbogbo Olokun sota, Olokun malagba, Olokun malagba, eri gbogbo efagba, Olokun malagba. So if you want to say it with me, I'll say Olokun. You say malagba. Olokun.
Malagba.
Olokun. You say malagba. Eri gbogbo efagba. Olokun o. Olokun.
Malagba.
So let's all say it together. Olokun malagba.
Olokun malagba.
Olokun malagba.
Olokun malagba.
Eri gbogbo efagba. Olokun malagba.
Malagba.
Olokun malagba. We all bow down to our senior water, Olokun, and all the other sacred bodies of water who have inspired us to be here together today. We give thanks. We pay honor and respect.
Ashe. Amen.
Ashe. Thank you.
Bobo, Ashe.
Before we go into our final closing piece of beauty, I would like to say a special thank you to our people behind the scenes, Brother Colin and Sister Rachel, without whose help this would have not ever happened at all. So if we could all just pray a little bit of extra blessings for them, I'd be so grateful.
Sister Cantara.
Yes, Sister Cantara.
Sister Cece.
Yes.
Thank you. And I do add our thanks on behalf of Kosambai, and we encourage you to continue creating those spaces of mutuality and respect grounded in our tradition, and be bold, be courageous. It's not easy. They don't want us to have those spaces. So continue doing the work. I drafted a little note, but thank you. Thank you to all of you.
Mambo Dr. Khadidra, thank you so much for leading us today.
It's been such a pleasure. It really came together. This is really beautiful energy. And again, everything is spirit-led with this. When I first came onto this project and we were talking about the theme, I remembered that I had published a book of poetry that I entitled Saltwater Rivers. And I published this book of poetry in 2016, in December of 2016, after my mom had passed away in that August. So when she passed away, that was like a death and rebirth for me. I'm her only daughter. And there's some, old folks saying, that says that you don't become a woman until your mother passes. And so this was a new beginning for me. And so the saltwater rivers, I had to, from that point of deep pain and tears that continuously flowed, I had to create beauty before the end of that year. I had to create something sweet from it. And so that was the book of poetry. So it was the salt water, that then went into the rivers. And so I'm going to share with you all the poem, that's the title piece of the book, called Saltwater Rivers, on these themes of coming together, of language, coming together in language and culture and time and tradition. Her name shows you the way. Acrid torrents dissecting still, sweet waters running deep, deep like rivers, like the Nile, like the Congo. Savannah saltwater geechees know these rivers love the ocean. Guatapana, da Javon, jote mi gente palecueola, avec un acento español. Mira, Gadilu love, braided rivers, como mi pelo. Her name tells of her story, begotten way before you and y'all and them. Heavenly freeway for all nations, spiraling, rinsing, purging, quenching thirst of queens and paupers. Yamaya, Mami Wata, Mama Oshun, Olokun, washing us all in cool waters, cleansing us all from the inside out, where the doctors fail to heal. Asheo, Aibobo.
Asheo.
Ashe.
Ashe, Asheo.
Aibobo.
Ashe. Aibobo. Come to the end of the presentation. And I'm just trying to swim in that poem for a minute. You just gave us one, but it was, I'm just swimming in it. I just want to be in gratitude for having the space, gratitude for the founders of Kusamba, including Mama Claudine, just to think about that we can't even imagine the sacrifices it makes to create your own institution, an institution of resistance.
Right on.
So that is so very, very powerful. And we thank you. We're in full gratitude. Thank you. So we're at the end. Merci. I mean, I want Mambo, Khadija to just, end or invite us. I love this woman. I love my Mambo.
I love you too.
Yeah.
So just say something, sister. Just put me back together.
Oh, I don't know. I love you all. This has just been so marvelous. My heart is full. I feel full and empty at the same time. I'm at peace. So I give thanks to you all, for everybody gathered here today. Thank you. And for those who'll be watching on the replay. On the replay.
Can we stop share screen? Let's see if we can get an image of folks.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just remember the work that we're doing and so many others are doing, around the globe to honor, the Pan-African identity. I don't know. I know we're at the end. I don't know if anybody wanted to make a comment. Folks have been chatting. But if you wanted to say anything to be in community, and I look to the team in terms of if anyone wants to have any final words, but thank you so much for being in space with us today.
Thank you for having this space. This back-to-back meetings for me, the Association of Black Psychology, then come to this, talk about being full and empty at the same time. I'm just overjoyed. Give thanks.
Thank you. And we know there are some people also here we can't see, so we thank you. I want us to remember that we are not alone. We are not alone. And we're full, perfect, complete. So please keep that in mind. And energy matters. Energy matters. So let's give energy to where all those who fight and stand for Pan-African identity, send them energy, send IT energy, send energy on the continent. I have a friend, sister friend, Gina Elise, who's doing an amazing job work in Senegal right now. Is going to have a presentation. Send energy. Send energy to all of those right here in Miami. Send energy to those in Oklahoma, wherever our imprint is. Let's just end by raising our hands, and those here, just send them energy. Just send them energy. That's all. That's all. Just send them energy. Yeah. You feel that. Aibobo.
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 May
Mambo,
the
do you
Roi
want to
have the
go?
final words. May
Before you
the
go,
Roi
Mambo, do
have
you
the
want
final-
to talk about 10 Global, just in case if people may not know about?
Yes. So I founded 10 Global, in response to the earthquake. In 10 Global, there's a lot of work being done, TENGLOBAL.org. It's for the Empowerment Network Global. So I didn't set any intention, but the intention of empowerment. Most of the work that's being done is in the Haitian community, in education. I consider myself a voodoo psychologist. I do therapy work with the consciousness of my ancestors, and I do a lot of different type of work. The most that I'm known for is the education piece. But so visit, give advice, support the work that we're doing, and thank you for the opportunity. My sister Claudine said, let our first Kosamba be about education, educating the whole person, the spirit, our ancestral line. Let it be wherever we go, whatever institution, know that we have education. We are remembering who we are. So with full gratitude and humility, I say thank you, and continue to support all of those who stand in resistance. Okay. Blessings. Until the next time.
Until the next time.
Merci.
Merci,
Merci.
Merci. The spirits walk with us.
So much.
Yes.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Great seeing
Merci,
you,
Ampil.
Claudine.
Merci un pile. À la prochaine.
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll stop recording.
I'm not